Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at a very powerful Open Ultra League team that helped me climb to veteran rank this season and the global leaderboards last season. This team consists of Meteor Beam AURORUS on the lead, always one of my favorite picks in the Open Ultra League. With Meteor Beam, it is incredibly powerful. And in the back, I'm running two grass types. I'm running Trevenant and Stone Edge on Virizion. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out Meteor Beam AURORUS and the double grass team in action in the Open Ultra League. Hopping to the first match, picking up a bit of a tricky lead, AURORUS into Pelipper. XL Pelipper definitely a core breaker for this team as it can hit the entire team for super effective damage. I'm definitely going to be staying in here with AURORUS, going for the Weather Ball bait, but losing CMP. I can tank a Weather Ball, so I am going to let this through. Unfortunately, I don't have the greatest IVs on my AURORUS, so I'm in a spot where two Weather Balls is definitely going to KO. I'm going to farm up, fire off the Meteor Beam, and again lose CMP. Here's where I am going to commit my first shield. They fire off the Weather Ball, I shield, and I'm returning fire with the Meteor Beam, hoping they let it through, which they do not. But the nice thing is, I've managed to get both shields down already, and both Virizion and Trevenant can hit exceedingly hard in the endgame. I am expecting, odds are they're probably going to have some kind of steel type in the back, as Pelipper does pair very well with steel types. I fire off the Weather Ball here, switch into Trevenant, and I'm able to catch the Weather Ball. That is quite nice. Opponent now going to send in Gliscor, and I'm very happy that I pivoted because Gliscor would absolutely destroy my Virizion in the back. They fire off the Night Slash. Trevenant able to hang on and make it to the Shadow Ball. This is not quite going to KO, but it is going to do a lot of damage. And from here, now I should just be able to send in AURORUS and commit to the farm down. AURORUS going for the farm down. Gliscor with a sliver of HP able to make it to the Night Slash. Thankfully, that's not going to be enough to KO. AURORUS, in comes Pelipper. AURORUS gets the farm down in the back. There's the steel type, and it's Steelix. And at this point, this game's over. I can just send in Virizion. Turns out it's a Shadow Steelix, which is very cool. But Virizion is just so spammy. Virizion able to tank the super effective Psychic Fangs, and I'm already at the back-to-back Sacred Swords. Sacred Sword number 1 is going to get the Steelix low, and Sacred Sword number 2 is going to get the win. So right off the bat, facing a core breaker in game 1, but still getting the win. Moving into the second match, picking up the Dream Lead, AURORUS into Pidgeot. Let's go. Opponent is going to be immediately save switching into Registeel, and I'm going to respond with Trevenant. I could also send in Virizion, but me personally, I like to send in Trevenant here, because at minimum, Trevenant will either guarantee switch advantage or shield advantage, and honestly, I'm okay with either one. Switch, of course, is very nice, because then I have AURORUS on Pidgeot, but if I'm able to get both shields down, I do have Stone Edge on Virizion, which can absolutely smack the Pidgeot. I'm firing off Shadow Ball number 2, they're going to let that through. This is not quite going to KO here, so I am going to let that Zap Cannon go. Unfortunately, my opponent, very lucky with the debuffs, able to make it to another one. The Shadow Ball not quite going to be enough to KO here. Firing off the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball does get shielded. Opponent double shielding for switch, but honestly, that works pretty nicely for me. I can send in Virizion. I'm more than happy to shield stuff, farm down, and leave with a ton of energy because I know I can Stone Edge. Opponent with another attack debuff from the Registeel. You hate to see it. I'm more than happy to double shield here because I know I'm just going to have so much energy. So when they bring in the Pidgeot, I can throw one double kick and the Stone Edge. I'm debuffed to the Zap Cannon, but this is going to do a lot. Stone Edge lands on the Pidgeot. Opponent sends in Trevenant, and at this point, AURORUS is in an incredibly good spot here. They're going to fire off a Seed Bomb. I'm going straight for the Meteor Beam. Meteor Beam, while only neutral, is going to do a ton of damage, and the threat of a farm down is going to force them to empty their energy. They're forced to throw energy, and at this point, this game is over, as I can send in Virizion, throw 3 double kicks, and then go for the Sacred Sword here. Sacred Sword, of course, double resisted, but the Trevenant only has a minimal amount of HP remaining, so Sacred Sword will KO, and I leave with the Stone Edge loaded. So the opponent won switch, Virizion doesn't care, and that is a good game. Moving into the next match, we see the same lead, AURORUS into Pidgeot. AURORUS picking up a lot of favorable leads. Opponent save switches into Tapu Fini, and I'm going to respond with Trevenant. Trevenant going for the Seed Bomb right away. Let's apply some pressure onto this Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini going to let that through. Tapu Fini will make the Moonblast. Moonblast will get the Trev low, but again, I'm going to be in a position where I can guarantee switch advantage or both shields, and honestly with this team, either one is okay. I'm very close to the back-to-back moves. Opponent decides not to make a play for switch. Instead, they're going to be going for some energy on the Pidgeot. They're waiting their timer. Back in comes the Pidgeot. I decide not to throw the Seed Bomb so I can get an energy lead on AURORUS. They have Registeel in the back, and that is a good game. 3-0 in this set, moving into game number 4, leading AURORUS into Shadow Shiny Charizard. You love to see the flex. Opponent is going to be able to outpace and make it to the Blast Burn. Blast Burn is not lethal, but it will do a ton of damage since I don't have the greatest IV AURORUS. I commit the shield, and unfortunately I do get baited. I'm going to bait back. Weather Ball gets called by my opponent, and because they no-shield a Weather Ball, they can now win the 2-shield here. However, AURORUS should be able to get them low enough that I can farm down with Trevenant, and more often than not, if a team's leading a Charizard, they're pretty weak to Trevenant and Grass in general in the back. I'm going to farm up, firing off the Weather Ball. Decision time for my opponent. Are they willing to give up the final shield? Yes, they are. They want to get rid of AURORUS, and they're going to fire off the Blast Burn. Blast Burn onto AURORUS. Still not enough to KO. Aggressive switch into Trevenant, and I get the farm down. Opponent now going to send in Shadow Ampharos. So it looks like they are fairly weak to Grass in the back. Ampharos, of course, does have the Brutal Swing coverage, which will hit very hard onto Trevenant. But the nice thing is, I've basically gotten rid of the Ampharos. They fire off the Brutal Swing, and in the back, they have Chestnut, and I should have this game won. Now, Chestnut and Virizion have very similar coverage, but the nice thing is, I get some chip damage on the Chestnut, and on top of that, my double kicks hit for neutral, whereas their Vine Whips are going to be resisted. So all I have to do here, basically just make it to the back-to-back Sacred Swords. They're going to fire off a Frenzy Plant bait, as they don't want to lower their defense just yet, because of course, when they do, these Sacred Swords are going to do even more. But Virizion is just too spammy, making it to another Sacred Sword. This will be taking care of the Chestnut, and we are now 4-0 in the set. Hopping into the next match, leading AURORUS into Cresselia. Cresselia, definitely a bit of a core breaker for this team if it is running Grass Knot, because it can do fairly well versus AURORUS and my Virizion in the back. And unfortunately, they throw after 6 Psycho Cuts, meaning they do have access to Grass Knot. This is also a matchup where I wish that I had built a higher rank AURORUS, because as you're going to see, unfortunately, my AURORUS cannot quite tank the Psycho Cuts after tanking 2 Grass Knots. They're going to fire off Grass Knot number 2, that gets my AURORUS low, and I fall just short of the move. That is not great, as now they've won switch advantage and they still have a pretty healthy Cresselia. Cresselia gonna fire off the Moonblast. I'm farming up to the Shadow Ball, but they're going to make a switch into their Walrein. I'm gonna be firing off the Seed Bomb here. Seed Bomb will get some nice chip damage onto the Walrein. Walrein over farming, and I make it to Seed Bomb number 2. I'm gonna grab the shield and then send in Virizion. But the unfortunate thing about having to stay in that lead, which to be fair, I probably should have switched out anyway, is by staying in the lead now, if they happen to have an anti-grass in the back, then I'm gonna be in a lot of trouble here. I fire off the Sacred Sword, they let that go, they do have an anti-grass in Gliscor, and I concede the match. But as you're gonna see, was able to get the 4-1 and reach veteran rank, which is very nice to hit this early in the season. Alright, moving into set number 2, we have a Nightmare lead, AURORUS into Obstagoon. I save switch into Trevenant, and my opponent switches into Giratina. My favorite thing to do for Obstagoon leads is just switch into Trevenant. They can stay in and win that matchup, but a lot of the times, people will end up switching out because their backline is weak to AURORUS. They want to try and preserve the Obstagoon, and in that case, you can either get switch advantage or shield advantage. I'm able to successfully bait, and now I'm going to fire off the Shadow Ball. I want both of their shields or switch advantage. Shadow Ball able to land, and I successfully take switch advantage. That is very nice, as now I'll get to align that Obstagoon onto my Virizion in the endgame. I fire off the Seed Bomb. That does not do a lot of damage. Obstagoon, very nice counting, as they're going to fire off the Night Slash just before I make it to Seed Bomb number 2. But now I can send in Virizion in the back. They have Trevenant, and AURORUS is going to do exceedingly well here. AURORUS can comfortably tank a Seed Bomb. They go for the Seed Bomb. I'm able to shrug off that damage and return fire with the Weather Ball. Weather Ball, is it going to grab the final shield? It is not. And from here, I'm just going to shield and fully farm down. The Powder Snow damage from AURORUS definitely going to be adding up here. They cannot make it to a move, and I am not baiting. I'm going straight for the Meteor Beam onto the Obstagoon. Do they respect it? They do not. Obstagoon with a sliver of HP gets the farm down, but Virizion easily takes care of it. Picking up a great lead in the next match, AURORUS into Alolan Ninetales. Regardless of Ninetales' fast move, this is a dominant matchup. Opponent save switches into Jellicent, and I'm going to respond with Trevenant. Odds are they're probably going to Surf Bait, but I can't really afford to no-shield the Shadow Ball, so I shield, and of course, I do get baited with a Surf. I'm going to farm up and fire off the Shadow Ball just before they're able to reach theirs. Shadow Ball does get the shield. I'm more than happy to double shield here because I do really want to keep alignment because AURORUS absolutely crushes Alolan Ninetales. I'm going to farm up. I'm basically at the back-to-back here. So the nice thing is they can't really afford to shield that. Now they're going to send in their Ninetales. Ninetales, farm it up, and I'm going to fire off the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball will do quite a bit of damage if it lands, which it does. Trev, farming up. Very nice counting by my opponent here. Firing off the Weather Ball just before I'm able to make it to a move. Weather Ball lands, in comes AURORUS. They have Toxicroak in the back. I am core broken, and I resign the match. Moving into the next match, leading AURORUS into Pidgeot. Definitely saw a lot of Pidgeot, and AURORUS was absolutely feasting. Opponent gonna save switch into Jellicent, and again, I'm gonna commit the shield here. Odds are probably getting Surf Baited, but they actually full send the Shadow Ball. That is incredibly nice for me. Here, I go for a very ill-advised bait. This is definitely not what I should have done because, as you see, I'm not able to farm down. I'm able to win CMP, but if my opponent wants to force the final shield, they can just shield here, and I'm going to be forced to give up that final shield because I don't really want to concede switch advantage. So I will expend the final shield. Here, I elect to take a few extra hexes just because I don't want Pidgeot to get as much farm as they typically would. Pidgeot going for the farm down. I'm able to make it to the back-to-back Seed Bombs, but they're not getting much more farm than that, which is quite nice. Going for Seed Bomb number 2. That is going to land onto the Pidgeot, and now I can send back in AURORUS. They're throwing a move, no shields remaining. Odds are they're probably going for the Brave Bird. Brave Bird lands in the back. They have Scrafty, and Virizion absolutely crushes Scrafty, especially when the opponent throws on alignment. Power-Up Punch, not going to be doing a lot. Virizion is incredibly tanky in the Ultra League, able to absorb damage after damage. Opponent farming up, again throwing the Power-Up Punch on alignment. You love to see it. And this game is already over, as we're very close to the back-to-back Sacred Swords here. Sacred Sword is going to land. Opponent sends in the Pidgeot. I can fire off Sacred Sword number 2 just to burn the clock. Send in AURORUS, snipe with the Weather Ball, and the opponent resigns the match as the Weather Ball is thrown, and that is a good game. Hopping into the final match, leading AURORUS into Charizard. As we've seen, pretty decent lead for AURORUS. Opponent save switches into Swampert, and that is by no means a save switch when a Pokemon like Trevenant exists. So I'm just going to bank a Weather Ball, catch the Hydro Cannon on my Swampert, and I should just be able to farm up to the back-to-back moves here, or at the very least one short of the back-to-back. So I am going to farm up. Looks like I will be building up to the back-to-back Seed Bombs just before they're able to make their third Hydro Cannon. Seed Bomb is going to KO. Back in comes the Charizard, and I am not baiting. I'm going straight for the Shadow Ball. Let's apply some pressure here. Opponent commits the shield. That is very good news for me. I can send back in the AURORUS. Opponent farming up, goes for the catch onto Beware. Love the spice from the opponent, but that will be game over. All in all, I do believe AURORUS is probably the most slept on Pokemon in the Open Ultra League. Typing wise, I'll admit, definitely does leave a bit to be desired, but Meteor Beam is an absolutely ridiculously powerful move. Combining that with the Powder Snow Weather Ball combination, which as we've seen on a Pokemon like Alolan Ninetales can be incredibly deadly, AURORUS, a lot of teams are not preparing for it, and on top of that, it seems like at the very least the Open Ultra League meta at the moment is very flyer heavy on the lead. So if you do choose to bring AURORUS can absolutely feast, as it's shutting down basically any flyer your opponents will be bringing. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is absolutely incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.